call to order the workshop of the Carrabelle City Commission. It's Tuesday, October the 8th, 2019, 2 p.m. We're at Carrabelle City Hall. The prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance is not required. And I'll ask everyone to please speak into the microphone, and that includes Mr. Hummel, who just came in, and Mr. Magnan. And at this point, these are our only two attendees. So our item today is discussion of Ordinance 199, which is Carrabelle Animal Control Ordinance. And I just, want to let you know that Franklin County, or for the public record, Franklin County Animal Control Service or offices serve Carrabelle. And the city of Carrabelle does not have an animal control facility or animal control officers. We'll go through and review this ordinance 199 paragraph by paragraph, and we have copies up here, Mr. Hummel, if you'd like to have one for your reference.
I think I'm gonna excuse myself for a second, grab my tablet where I have it.
Okay, that'd be very good.
I'll be right back.
Okay, and so then after we do that, we'll go back and review it again real quick, make sure we have all of our amendments and revisions in order. And then we're going to have legal input, and Mr. Hartman can input as we go along. But I did speak with Michael Marone this morning. He called, and he said once we get all of our revisions in order, if you need to confer with Mr. Schuler, the county attorney, to please do that, because they want the law enforcement officers to meet the animal control officer on site. We had discussed that briefly, but that's what Mr. Marone, he wants to make sure we're discussing that today.
Every time.
It appears that way. So, and then I think that we'll have ourselves, this might be too long to have on a regular meeting when we want to, when you get the draft prepared. So we may want to review the draft again, but maybe in a special meeting style, and have Mr. Marone and or Mr. Fonda Davis come to that meeting, just a special meeting where we address a draft or adopt the draft as a, and then I know we'll have to have 2 public hearings after that.
Let me, not to divert anything, but let me suggest this. If we are paying the county, right?
$3,500 for this year.
For this year.
Fiscal.
So that they will continue to have the county animal control officer work inside the city. And I did not do this before this meeting because I didn't think of them essentially telling us how that's all going to function, in addition to basically our officer meeting them and everything else. That's a different issue, obviously we'll talk about that later. Is why wouldn't we, almost like the model flood ordinance, maybe we should just absolutely mirror their animal control ordinance. That way their animal control officer isn't trying to figure out between 2 different ordinances what's going on. I mean, I think that would make most sense. So he's not trying to apply one. Maybe it's similar, but one sort of standards or fines or anything here in the city different than the county. Well,
I did tell Mr. Marone that we had members of the public. Our animal control ordinance refers to dogs or cats and dogs only, and then that's the only animal that's listed in there. And then otherwise, animal. It just says animal, like generic.
Oh, they're domestic.
Yes, and then I told Mr. Marone that, and that we had citizens that would like to see the names of other animals listed there, like I'm just going to go ahead and say chickens, or maybe someone wants to put hogs, or maybe we want to say wild animals, like if they're, because it talks about rabies and vaccinations, and so maybe we want to, refer to that as well. And we may want to change our fine. I told Mr. Marone that we may want to increase that from $10. So we don't know what the county's fine is, and we don't know who's going to issue the citation, and who's going to collect the money, and all of that stuff. So,
and again, something that is an issue and kind of is, I wouldn't say, it is a little bit of a growing issue, is when we have ordinance violations, it used to be the state attorney picks them up. And they still do, my understanding is for the county. They've stopped doing it for the city. And that costs us, you see on my bills, some money. Typically, it's alcohol, container stuff. It's usually police who issue these ordinance violations. And then we spend thousands every year dealing with that and not being necessarily reimbursed because some of the folks have pretty limited means as far as that goes. But on this animal control stuff, just again, food for thought, if the animal control officer, what worries me is that we're gonna end up doing everything. Meaning, we're gonna be, what was the concern before was the police, I thought the police said that is not a good use of our time, to be going out and doing animal control, right? They might as well be if they have to go out every time. There's gonna be two animal control officers, the Carrabelle police officer and the county animal control officer. And I would think that it's possible that, I mean, who's gonna, just as you said, who's gonna issue the violation? We want the animal control officer to do it. Otherwise,
Their ordinance is on their website, so I mean, if you wanted to bring your computer, I could hook it up and put it on the screen if you wanted to look at their ordinance.
Yeah, we should do that.
yeah, but it's a big divert, I mean, obviously, just thinking that right now is, we don't wanna spend a whole ton of time, we gotta decide where we wanna spend our time, on
Well,
which
are you
ordinance.
talking about a county-wide ordinance that already exists right now, or is that
Correct,
just our
correct.
Appalachian Coal?
Just for, sorry, the countywide, because it's a county animal control officer that we're paying to police this
Well-
inside the city.
When I talked to Albert, who's the animal control officer here, who, at least he's the one that responded to a call that I had. He knew the kind of the guidelines in Appalachian Coal, but he didn't seem to know about Carrabelle. At least that's what I perceived him to say, you know. So I don't know if Appalachian Coal also has an ordinance like this. And I think that we're two different places too. You know, I think that maybe what happened here doesn't necessarily have to happen in that much.
And I don't think this.
If there's two separate things. And I don't, just to finish, I don't think it's too much to ask an animal control officer to know what the ordinance is here and what it is someplace else.
Especially if we're paying.
Well, we're paying him, but we have nothing to do with that by the COLA. So
Right.
if
That's
he's
right.
enforcing the county ordinance, just like, again, I keep going back to the model flood, although we're getting on that now, is if we adopt an entire scheme ordinance that he's not familiar with, that we're expecting him to, what I'm worried about, this is the lawyer part, is that we're gonna end up doing all of the enforcement on this, meaning our officers gonna issue the notice violation, I'm gonna end up over in county court spending thousands of dollars of time in the city, in addition to $3,500 we're paying their person. Why wouldn't we just do it ourselves? I mean,
Do what now?
the point of paying the county and continuing with the county is so that, because we don't have an animal control officer, and I thought we were getting out of, because I thought the police made it clear that it's not a good use of their time, but how are they gonna explain that someone's drowning or in a domestic situation or something else, and they were riding shotgun with the animal control officer, and they can't respond to that, like, more serious incident? Was the
Well, we don't have an animal control, we don't have a facility to
Right.
put an animal in, you know, unless Keisha wants to take it on in her office.
Right.
I have a question for Mr. Frank. Frank, were you on the board in '89 when this was created?
Be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
What my question, what I was leading into is if this ordinance, being the city of Carrabelle's ordinance, if it was anywhere similar to the county, I'm not talking about Apalachicola, I'm talking about the county, because I kind of agree with Dan that we need to look at what the county's doing, since we have an animal control officer from the county that's handling our animal issues, and they have the housing for it, and we're paying $3,500 this year and $7,000 the year after. If we're gonna be somewhat similar to what the county is to save some confusion. That doesn't mean I'm suggesting that we go to a county ordinance, but to look at them and see how similar they are.
Well, it was 1986, so the thing is 33 years old. It does need to.
86, yeah.
Yeah, it does need to be
I wasn't
revised
there.
a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
I would think, you know.
I said 89.
But it, to me, because we've come across several ordinances that were identical mirrored, like our camping ordinance, trailer ordinance, mirrored the counties identically. And this one may very well do that. But I would think that maybe we need to look at it, add some revisions, and then let Mr. Hartman take it to the attorney, Mr. Schuler, and see, you know, how it compares, or what we can't do, what we can do. If we want to add chickens to it, or pigs to it, or something,
Well,
then I don't see the big what's the big, when Mr. Floyd comes into the city limits, he knows then he's gonna have to get after chickens at large as well as dogs and cats, and it's not that complicated.
Brenda, may I say something?
Yes.
That, dogs, cats, chickens, and other domestic animals are already covered in this one.
Mhm.
I have found the Florida statute that defines what domestic animals are. I
Okay,
think we just need to make it more clear about, for the sake of this one, if we want to stick with it, that, those things are already covered in this one. They just need to be defined more clearly.
all right.
They're just not named like
Yeah.
dogs and cats.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but it's that name, when you call something a domestic animal, I mean, there's a definition for that. And there's even, like I said, a Florida statute for that, and I have them right here with what animals are included. In a, equine, bovine, goats, sheep, swine, dogs, cats, poultry, and other domesticated beasts or birds. That's the Florida statute for what defines a domestic animal.
And
Well, that
so-
covers a lot of ground.
And that is not in the definitions, and it could be added to the definitions.
I think so too.
And
I mean,
and there may be some other words that need to be added to the definitions.
They also have exotic animals in the county.
Oh, they do?
And feral animals.
Right.
Does anybody know who goes with animal control in this county? Does the officer have to go with him there? And why couldn't we give him control in Carrabelle to where the officer wouldn't have to be with him?
And I asked that of Mr. Marone whenever he and I talked last about this. Does an officer accompany in the county calls? And he told me he would let me know, and he did.
Well, let me share with you what I said in the meeting, the county meeting. In their first meeting, when it was brought up, the county board was pressing to have a law enforcement officer accompany the animal control officer. At the second meeting, they were backing off a little bit because there were some concerns about just exactly what we're saying here is, why should a law enforcement officer go if not needed? Now, here's just what I heard, and it's not official because they haven't sent us anything official. But what I heard at that meeting was they were considering if there was a people issue, a person issue. In other words, if you had a person that was causing an issue, then the law enforcement officer need to be there. And even in our ordinance, it says that. And that's what they were saying at the last meeting that I attended, that they had the discussion.
And I agree, it
And I
should
agree
be
with
that.
that.
It
That's
should
correct.
be that, or, if there was an animal biting a human, then you need to have an officer there.
Anytime there's a law enforcement necessity there, fine.
Mhm.
But if an animal control officer is just going out and picking up a stray, it's not necessary
That's
for an
right.
officer to be there.
Or trying to round up poultry or whatever, no.
So they were backing up on that a little bit, but that was just me sitting in the audience listening to them.
Well, let's take a look at it. It's an easy read. I found it to be easy to read and understand. Did most everyone?
Yes.
But we can take a look and see where we might want to add, just like Mr. Magnan suggested, you know, we need to add domestic animals. We need to go ahead and add exotic and feral animals to the definitions. But it says it's an ordinance relating to the regulation, vaccination, confinement, and disposal of cats and dogs.
And I think that should be cats, dogs, and domestic animals.
Okay.
That's my suggestion, you know.
Yes.
Under 1A, it says animal. For the purpose of this ordinance, an animal shall mean dog, cat, or other domestic animal. Isn't it already in here?
But we're gonna,
So could we just do disposal of animals?
I would suggest all, use the language all, not other, but all domestic animals. And then put a definition in here of what the of domestic animals are.
according to the Florida statute.
Correct.
And,
That's my opinion.
and the Florida statute certainly includes dogs and cats, right?
It does, yes.
So for the regulation, vaccination, confinement, and disposal of all domestic animals, and providing for definitions and rabies vaccinations, owner responsibility, impoundment, redemption, adoption, right of entry, interference, citation on violations, citations on violations, cruelty, fighting, and abandonment, duty to report animal bites, removal of dead animals from public right-of-way, and repeal of conflicting ordinances, servability, applicability, and safety clause, and providing an effective date thereof. So, whereas the City Commission of Carrabelle, Florida, and the citizens of Carrabelle determine and declare that this ordinance is necessary for the public health, safety, welfare, and protection of their natural environment. Now therefore be it enacted by the City Commission of Carrabelle. And so number one, we have definitions. And it starts out with animal. And it shall mean dog, cat, or other domestic animals. But now, are exotic animals domestic animals? Is that something different?
They give a definition, an exotic animal has,
Like, I have a friend that has a Bear Creek Feline Center. He has servals, which looks like a leopard. And there are people that have those as domestic animals.
And in the Florida, excuse me, Cal.
Yeah,
In the Florida statute, it does say other domesticated beasts or birds.
okay, that would
So
include.
that, I think they are covered under that.
this
And that-
definition,
That could be a squirrel or a monkey or.
Burmese
It has to-
python?
Domesticated.
But
you
like
have to go back
is
to-
a python a domestic?
an
You
exotic
already asked
animal,
that question, Mayor.
an exotic animal means any animal not identified in the definition of animal provided in this part that is native to a foreign country or foreign origin or character, that is not native to the United States or was introduced from abroad. This term specifically includes animals such as, but not limited to lions, tigers, leopards, elephants, camels, antelope, anteaters, kangaroos, and water buffalo, and species of foreign domestic cattle such as ankle, gale, and yak.
But,
Well,
now, okay.
I think the definition of domestic animal is a little more exacting than that. You know, it says an animal that has been tamed and kept by a human.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty wrong.
as a work animal, food source, or a pet. Those are the, so I suppose those animals that you named, Courtney, if they were owned by a person, a human, and tamed, as some of those animals could be, you know. I mean, people own snakes and they own other type of animals, but that definition, and I didn't get that definition from the state statute, but that's a dictionary, definition of what a domestic animal is. They're owned, tamed by humans as a pet or food,
They're not wild.
work animal, food source, or pet. Yeah, they're not wild.
Usually if they're exotic, they have to have some kind of license.
Permits. Exactly, that's what I was talking to Mr. Tom about.
But they do get loose.
Then nobody claims them.
Well, and then they're governed by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. Wild animals are.
So we have a coyote come down there quite frequently, and we asked Charlie, Captain Charlie, you know, could we shoot it? He says, no, you call me.
Yeah.
And let them do it, if they can see.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's a wild animal.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay,
Well,
well.
I think we have to make that distinction too, in this oneness between a wild animal and a domestic animal. I think the distinction is important.
Do we need to, do you want to revise the definition for animal?
Well, animal in this document here, I mean, it says dog, cat, or other domestic animal. I mean, it's okay to have it like that. I think what we really need to do is expand the definition of what a domestic animal is.
Okay.
And it could be, that could stand, I mean, as a general broad statement, but then you have to go into what a domestic animal is.
All right, so, and we need to add that to this list.
What if we had animal and reptile? That would cover gators, snakes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the question for me, Mr. Frank, is getting gators and snakes and things like that, they're all considered wild, aren't they? They're controlled by FWC.
Very possible.
Like Keisha was saying, they have to be permitted.
Right.
That's where the Florida statute for domesticated animals comes into play, I think. You know, they define what the animals are, you know, and I think that's what probably we should go by, what
I
that,
agree.
you know. And I can give you what the number is of that statute, if anybody wanted to look it up. But I also have which animals are listed in that statute.
all right, well, I'll ask again then, is the animal, definition of animal right there, is that for the purpose of this ordinance, and this is important now, shall mean a dog, cat, or other domestic animal. And we will add the definition of domestic animal in this list. So for now, is this sufficient?
Yeah.
And we'll move forward, and we may have to come back to this one.
I think that's good, as long as we add that definition of domestic animal.
And if we get through this thing,
Yes.
we may come back and look at it. Now, Animal Control Authority, the person or persons designated to enforce this ordinance. Is that sufficient? Animal Control Authority, the person or person designated to enforce this ordinance. Do they show that in the Franklin County? What does it say?
Animal control officer means any individual employee contracted with or appointed by the Animal Control Authority for the purpose of aiding in the enforcement of this act or any other law or ordinance relating to the licensure of animals, control of animals, or seizure and impoundment of animals, which includes any state or local law enforcement officer or any other employee whose duties in whole or in part include assignments that involve the seizure and impoundment of any animal.
Okay, so that was Animal Control Officer.
That's a state definition, right?
This is a county ordinance.
It's in a county ordinance.
I would take that to mean that my neighbor that might get teed off about my cat couldn't
Yeah,
do it, because they're not licensed.
right. Now, does it have Animal Control Authority? Okay. Well,
Should we be more specific and say Franklin County Animal Control?
but
Or-
that,
Or the police?
over the next, if this thing goes for another 30, 35 years like the one we have now, it may not be Franklin County. I think that is okay, the
Yep.
person or persons designated to enforce this ordinance, and then we could put add animal control officer, like, the county has that definition. Is Dan there or no?
I'm staring right at it, animal control
Okay.
authority and animal establishment.
Does the animal control officer have the power to enforce?
Absolutely.
everything?
Well, this is the thing, the animal, yeah.
So that would
Now,
become
this
C.
is
Fines and
this is the, I mean, again, that's just because I'm sensitive to this, because I keep getting pulled over to the county and the state attorney, again, used to handle this, now we have to, and it's at our cost and our dime and all our hassle, is we want the Franklin County Animal Control Officer issuing the citations. We want to get a county citation.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's my opinion, right? I mean, we could take all this on ourselves and do it all, and it'll just be another drinking in public type situation if it's enforced. And that's fine, I'll go to the county and deal with it. But,
No, I think if they're the officer, they are the officer, if the sheriff, now if the sheriff issues a citation in the city limits, a speeding ticket, then the Franklin County sheriff is responsible for it.
Yep.
Or arrest someone in the city limits.
Absolutely.
So if a Franklin County certified officer, they hold a badge, don't they? Don't they hold a badge?
They've got,
Yeah, but it's for enforcement of sorts, and if they issue the citation, then they would handle it all the way through, I would believe.
it would,
And they're getting paid for it.
exactly, and they already have a process in
And
place.
the
the state attorney-
3,000, the way they're saying it right now, the $3,500 is just for this year. That's just to give Appalachia,
Chance to get over
yeah,
it.
yeah. They want it to be $7,000 from each city.
That's correct.
And they can't charge us $7,000 and them $3,500 this year, so. Yeah. Well, somebody would be over there speaking to them, but,
Well, Dan, I would like to say that I actually like the name Animal Control Authority, because the animal control person for the county and the person that we have here are not officers. Now, if a law enforcement officer goes, he's an officer. But authority, that animal control guy that works for the county that's going to enforce this to a degree and pick up animals and those things, is not an officer. They're an animal control authority.
But they're like a code enforcement officer in a way. They
That's
can-
right.
They can issue those citations.
They can issue a notice of violation. They cannot issue a notice to appear. It's in this ordinance, and it's in Florida law, and you know that.
Yeah, but we want, again, I'll just leave it alone, but I can't emphasize enough, we want them issuing these
I agree with that.
violations. Like, yeah, we just don't. Yeah. And otherwise, sure, we can obviously, have them enforce the city ordinance as much as.
all right.
And they get paid.
Yeah.
Now,
That's good, sorry, see, that is a good point, actually, they're the ones that'll get the fine. But-
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Could you clarify, Trina, what you were saying about notice to appear?
There's our attorney right there, but
Yes.
that's my knowledge of it right there.
What is that?
Yeah, the notice to appear, usually the clerk will then issue the notice to appear, which is basically mandatory, you need to show up in court to enter a plea on the guilty or not guilty to the notice of violation, and then if you don't show up, you can get a warrant issued for your arrest, so.
Okay.
It's a little
So
more
the-
serious, because it
So
needs to.
the animal control authority person would be able, there'd be a sequence of events that would result in a notice to appear.
Could be.
I mean, they could just pay their fine and then they wouldn't have to
Right,
appear.
right.
Right, but I mean, there wouldn't end there, like, well, they blew it off and there's nothing else. It
But
could
no, they
go
would-
to that step.
Correct. They-
So I'm gonna try to just keep pushing forward here.
Sure.
We'll come back. The animal establishment, that's any pet shop, grooming shop, animal auction, performing animal exhibition, kennel, or animal shelter, except this term shall not include the veterinary medical facilities, licensed research facilities, facilities operated by government agencies, or licensed animal dealers regulated by the USDA under the provisions of the U.S. Public Laws 89544 and 91579. Is that sufficient for animal establishment to define that?
As far as I know.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do we want to add the definition animal control officer as seen in the Franklin County ordinance?
That's a question for the
Yeah.
commission.
I just think animal control, what did I say, authority is a good definition. That's just my opinion. I think that covers both, whether it's an officer or whether it's the, animal control person or the code enforcement. You understand, I'm just using.
But that's my thought process is we need to designate the authority as Franklin County. Otherwise, they're gonna say, oh, appoint your own person. It says it in your ordinance. You appoint your own person. We're not specifically saying in here that we're using Franklin County
No.
animal control.
Is, if we're not getting the service that we need from Franklin County, do we want to rule out not having somebody here to enforce it? The ordinances?
If we would do that if we could afford it, but that would cost us, what's it costing to set up a new, streets and roads person about, well, with all of their equipment?
About 40 roughly.
But-
Open up the equipment and everything
Then you
else.
got to have
Yeah,
somebody
then you
to
gotta
hold
have-
those animals.
Yeah.
You gotta have a place
So-
to house
Is there-
somebody to.
To get a person set up and pay them, the first year would be probably 70 to 80,000, because you'd have to get them a truck and all of, all of their equipment. Then we have to have ongoing housing for it. Yeah.
This is something that I came to being asked about, so, there are so many codes that need to be enforced in our city. Do we have to have a specialist for each separate code? I mean, or can there be somebody who, takes care of more than just animals? And also, I see trucks going around where people are independent contractors for, like, dealing with bears or alligators or other kinds of stuff. There might, I wonder if we can't think about what our needs are at some point and then figure out how we're gonna meet those, or if we can meet those, and not rule anything out at this point.
Well, I don't know if animal control is mixed with like code enforcement of properties and rundown properties and misuse of public property. I don't think animal control is under the same
But
definition.
why, and I knew there's separate definitions, but a person can perform multiple tasks or wear multiple hats or perform multiple roles.
And they are, I mean, the code inspectors, law enforcement officers, animal control officers, fire safety inspectors are all under as code enforcement officers under statute. So,
Of any code,
city or.
A law enforcement officer can enforce any code in the city of Carrabelle.
A law enforcement
Right.
officer.
Yeah.
Mhm. But our law enforcement officers say that their duties overall generally are more important than trying to catch animals or, that kind of thing. That they may be on a major traffic accident and they can't they can't take a call to go run down.
Yeah, I don't,
Uh-huh.
I understand that, it's just that their code enforcement should generate revenue. And if the person's got a full-time job in enforcing codes, not just this code, one person for this code and one person for that code, maybe we
Well-
could see what the revenue generation side would be of it.
It would have to, that needs to come before the commission.
Yeah.
It's
There's
not,
no
it's a loser,
revenue.
it's a
It's
loser,
a
it's a
loser.
loser.
There's a what?
It's
It's a money loser. is what
Yeah,
that-
and the county's animal control person, it's not just one person. And he wears multiple hats. That's not all he does, is just animal control. He works at the landfill over there. So he wears multiple hats, but he or some employee through that particular section of the county is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to handle animal complaints or issues or whatever they may be. So the county pays for those services with that employee, plus they have a place to house those animals when they're collected. There's a lot of expense into that, as the mayor has pointed out, that we don't see the money to do that.
Well,
We would love to.
Well, I guess I walk around the city and I ride my bike around the city. I get chased by animals.
I do too.
Right now, I just read cats are the most, cats are now #1 for carrying rabies among domestic animals. You never know what you're gonna run into, and it's a quality of life kind of thing. I don't care whether we do it or the county does it or what, I'd just like to see it get done. And for me as a taxpayer, it's worth paying something to have that done. Because I don't think I have, I pay taxes, but then I can't go down that street because that dog lives there, or whatever.
Okay, but now we're gonna need to move
Okay,
along so
that's-
that we can finish before
I'm
it's time for
done
them
now.
to get off. Now, but I do want to say this about code enforcement. Maybe 3 years ago, it wasn't 4, I don't think it was 2 years ago, we put money in a line item budget to have a part-time code enforcer who would code enforce. And it wouldn't necessarily be complaint driven, they would just code enforce part-time. I asked the commission about it, the commission decided no. They decided they'd put the money in the budget for the line item, but then when it came time to let's look into hiring a code enforcer, they decided no, they did not want to hire a code enforcer because one of them did say concerned about retaliation. And they would rather for all of our code enforcement to remain complaint driven as it is, and as is the animal control ordinance today is complaint driven. So none of our codes in Carrabelle are really enforced. I mean, our speed limit is enforced, but as far as condemnation of properties or cleaning up properties or animal control, anything like that is not just generally enforced.
But I'm not sure what you mean. I know what the word retaliation means, but
Yes,
I'm not
but if
close to fear.
if we had someone, if the commission decided to hire someone
Mhm.
to go out and code enforce, like they do in Apalachicola, just ride the streets and see what
Right.
code of ordinances are being broken, and go up and knock on the door and issue a citation. Our commission is not, they're not in favor of doing that,
Because,
of retaliation.
well, I don't know you mean somebody's gonna shoot him, or?
Well, I don't know about that, I
Well,
can't say
I don't know what you
exactly.
mean by retaliation.
Well, cut your tires, put sugar in your tanks,
Okay.
in your cat, I don't know, I
Okay.
can't say.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about getting a dirty look at the
One way to go
IGA,
about it, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean,
Yes,
it
it
could
is.
happen 10 years later. So, no, this commission is not in favor of a hired code enforcer like they have. And actually, the county does not have a hired code enforcer.
but Apalachicola does.
Yes, Apalachicola does.
We're not Apalachicola.
Right. So we can't, even our code enforcement is done by complaint driven, generally. Someone has to call the call the animal control office. So that's how it's done. And,
But
that's
is
it.
that working? It
No.
doesn't seem to me it's working. I mean, if you're gonna put some, just by having the brush shop you're putting some weight on these animal control issues. But going over this ordinance is useless unless you address the enforcement issues that don't seem to be there.
Well, the enforcement would be for pushing the county, now that they're receiving not only our tax dollars for enforcement, but an additional service fee on top of that, pushing the county to come over here and do patrolling and code enforcement on the animals.
Well, maybe
on
it's just
animals
something
at
everybody
large.
has to put their resources together to do it. I think it's worth doing. I mean, you hear about reports of rabies in Eastport. I mean, how likely is that it could come here? Well, it's very likely that it could come here. It's probably already here. So, I mean, do we wait until a kid gets rabies or somebody gets mauled by a dog? I mean,
Regardless of what you put in place, that can happen.
that's true.
Regardless, you can have all the law and everything, but that can still happen.
But I think you can.
The answer is, if a dog don't maul it, kill the damn dog.
There's also prevention too, though, Frank, you know, of enforcing the thing that's in this code about having dogs have rabies.
Yes,
You know,
I'll
there
agree
is,
with you.
there is,
But you
some
cannot
steps you
stop
can
these
take.
things by having a law to control it. How many drunks is out there every night, but you got a law that says they can't be drunk and drive?
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank, but I think you can slow things like this down. I mean, if we didn't have any drug laws, what would it be like compared to what it is now? I mean, I think it'd be a lot of work.
That we don't know.
We don't know that, it's speculation, but I would speculate that it would be worse if there wasn't some enforcement involved.
Well, we're trying to do something to help.
We are.
The fact that we're all here today is a test to that, you know, that people feel that something needs to be done.
You should have been here 50 years ago. A dog could tear your leg off, and there wasn't nothing you could do unless you took care of the dog. Times has changed a long ways.
And
I mean,
actually,
that's true. I mean,
the dogs are not, when we first came here in '94, there's a great improvement. People are taking more responsibility for their dogs and cats than in years past, you know, and they understand, and there's peer pressure, you know, they're proud of their dogs and cats, so, overall. You know, they don't want them to be running at large in the street. So, but anyway, moving forward with the definitions, we're gonna add the Florida statute domestic animal definition. And then we have the definition here of at large. And that's a dog or cat, or we could put domestic animal in there too. Or just put domestic animal or animal. And shall be deemed as at large when off the property of the owner and not under restraint. So, I mean, that's fairly straightforward. And then confined is an animal will be considered confined if it's within a building, a pen, a fenced yard, a vehicle, or on a leash or a chain. And then humane manner, care of an animal to include but not be limited to adequate heat, ventilation, sanitary, shelter, wholesome food, water consistent with the normal requirements and feeding habits of the animal size and species. And this is something that the animal control officer does as well. They may get a complaint that an animal is being treated inhumane, so the officer comes, you know, to check on that. And they can be issued citations for that as well. Kennel is an establishment kept for the purpose of breeding, selling, or boarding cats and dogs, or engaged in the training cats and dogs. And would a kennel address any other animals, or would you want to change cats and dogs there to animals or domesticated animals?
I think it should be changed.
Okay.
I think cats and dogs should be replaced with the new wording that we use.
All right,
Domesticated animal.
okay, or animal covers domestic.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and basically throughout the whole ordinance, you think? Okay,
No, that's.
That way it'll clear up that it's not just dogs and cats.
yes, that's what I worry about. Because other animals can be treated bad or let run at large. License authority. The agency or department of the city of Carrabelle City Commissioner, any designated representative thereof, charged with the issuance and revocation, how do you say that word? Revoke?
Revocation.
Of permits and licenses under the authority of this ordinance. Now, would this be, who is this now? This is the licensing of the animal, where they get their little tag, or rabies tag, or I've got question marks by it, I don't know what this is referring to.
Which letter are you on?
Rabies tag have to come from a county, from a
A
veterinarian.
dog,
Yeah,
veterinarian.
that's right.
The agency or department of the city of Carrabelle City Commission or any designated representative thereof charged with the issuance or revocation of permits and licenses under the authority of this ordinance.
I don't know what those permits and licenses was.
Would that be someone if they're running a kennel or an animal establishment, like a grooming
I mean, I
place?
suppose you could
Maybe.
have a business license.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, neutered, rendered permanently incapable of reproduction. Now, here's one: nuisance. An animal shall be considered a nuisance if it damages soils, defiles, or defecates on private property other than the owner's, or on public walks and recreation areas unless such waste is immediately removed and property disposed of by the owner. It causes a disturbance by excessive barking or other noise making, or chases vehicle, or molests, attacks, or interferes with persons or other domestic animals on public property.
The only thing I would have to comment on there is that last statement on public property, because that's narrowing it down just to public property. Property other than the owners.
Now, what if the animal, because you know, now we're all pet friendly, what if the animal is in a restaurant and it gets in a fight with another animal? I have seen that. Or it gets in a fight, or bites somebody else in a restaurant. How would that work, Mr. Martin?
I think actually we need to back up to
Okay.
where it talks about animals to be considered a nuisance, and it says, it's a little awkward, but on private property other than yours or on public walks or recreation areas. When it talks later about, semicolon or chase vehicles, semicolon or molested, attacks or interferes with persons or other domestic animals on public property. When it talks about public property there at the end, that's just another category, it's not the overall. Okay. It doesn't modify the entire section A.
Because it does say private property.
On top.
It does in the beginning of it, that's correct.
And Mary, your question of, I think that's it, is if you had two animals fighting at a restaurant that allowed you to bring your dog in, that's private property, or it's a, say it's on the sidewalk after on the junction, then it would be on public property, but I think it's definitely covered. Obviously, there's no exception for dog fighting somewhere.
Owner, a person having a right of property or custody of a domesticated animal, not a dog or cat, or knowingly permits a domesticated animal to remain on or about the premises occupied by that person. Is that all right to replace that dog? It's got nothing but dog or cat there.
We are talking about all domesticated animals, aren't we?
Are we just using the word animal since it's defined as a domestic animal?
Whatever y'all want to do, it doesn't matter to me, but we'll go back to those two important definitions before we leave today.
And Dan, you're going to be writing this.
I will, I'm making some notes, but if you would, if I can have, I'll rework what I've got in Word.
Person, any individual, corporation, partnership, or institution commonly recognized by the law as a unit. Is that all right? Would that include a restaurant or a hotel? A corporation? Restraint. A dog or cat shall be considered under restraint if it is confined within the real property limits of its owner or secured by a leash or led or under the control of a responsible owner. And that dog or cat's gonna be domesticated animal or animal. Now, I have a question on this one because I've heard them talk about it at the county commission, or under the control of the responsible person.
So that
And that means they're talking about folks on the beach have said, well, my dog is under voice control. And so what defines voice control? And I think they decided on the county commission that voice control or just any kind of just general under the control really wasn't acceptable, that it needed to be on a leash. The animal needs to be on a leash. Because my opinion, it's subjective when I say, well, my animal is under voice control, compared to what Commissioner Millender's opinion may be, that his animal is under voice control. Your animal may be well-trained from a dog training school, and I'm just calling out here, kitty, you know. Yeah.
So would a cat be required to be on the leash?
And even under voice control, it would have to be of the owner, because the dog or the cat may be somewhere where the owner's not. And
Yes.
it's under no control.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I understood at the county meeting. They were holding hard to the leash.
Somebody else's
Would a
dog.
cat be required to be on the leash?
I don't know, me and my cat, we're gonna,
According to the
My
county,
cat,
yeah.
I need to keep my cat away. We just
I don't know what we're
basically, he showed up wild and he comes
know
and
what I
goes and I
have.
feed him, but
I have one of those.
he's got his rabies shots
Mhm.
and he's fixed, but he's
Did the python need to be on a leash
not
too?
gonna.
All of them need to be on it.
Yeah. And it does, a python does need to be on a leash.
And somebody has to be on the other side of the leash.
No, I'm with
Yes.
Frank on that. A python needs to be shot.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, cats are a little harder to corral.
So, but when, I can see this when the animals are out on the beach and they're out, yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, I would go with, I agree with the county, they should be on a leash, particularly on the beach, because we go down there and people are, dogs take after us and they're going, come here, and then, oh, they never, she always comes, or, you know, that's what they didn't this time, you
Not
know?
this time.
Or when they're in a restaurant, you know, they need to be on a leash when
Absolutely.
they're walking on the sidewalk. And
Now,
like-
can we require them on private property to keep them on a leash? Cause that's,
Mhm.
would be up to the owner of the restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think of that one, obviously, people at their house, but in restaurants, I've never seen it, but, you know, restaurant owner can be.
But then the liability would be all
Liability on a
theirs.
restaurant owner.
Okay,
Tremendous.
so that would be more like a civil suit, if it
Right.
happened, like in a parking lot, an accident in a parking lot, would that be kind of, that's like a civil suit in a way? when
Yeah,
it
on
happens on
private property.
private property. So do we want them to be under, when they're in the public property, on a leash, no voice command? Can you do that, Mr. Hartman?
Yes, a dog or cat shall be considered under restraint, confined within real property limits of its owner, or secured by a leash or lead.
Yep.
Do you need public property or just leave it like that?
It's not on its owner's property, it needs to be on a leash or lead.
Okay.
That's what I,
And then would it need to be, it says secured by a leash or lead? Does that need to be held on by a person? Do we need to go that far, or?
I don't think it's secured if it's not. I think, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but as far as, you're saying in certain language it says that the leash or lead needs to be held by the responsible person.
And
I mean, think of it this way, if you had a rope and you say it needs to be secured by a rope, if you just tie the rope to the dog, it's not secured, right?
Okay.
Because it's just running wild with a rope.
I think that's a given, that you have to have.
If it's secured, something's on the other end of it. It could be tied to a stake, it could be tied up out front of a restaurant, and the person's not on the other end of it, yes, but it's secured, it's not going
Or
anywhere.
a
You need to
horse
stay out of the
that's
radius.
tied up outside.
Yeah, the rope in the kitchen.
Yeah, the ram.
On the TDC, I have been over this with them for years. They're pet friendly, we advertise pet friendly, but we put it in magazines and on brochures and on little videos all over the southeast. We have the dogs running on the beach and they've got their leash or harness or whatever, and the leash is dragging behind, or they'll, they show the dog riding in a whatever and the leash is behind, and finally it took the county commission getting upset recently, and they charged then back to the TDC, you all need to help us beef up this enforcement. And I said, we have got to show the animal being held by a human being. We cannot let, continue to show pictures and videos of the animals running free, even though they have a leash. So that's what we're redoing all of that. A vicious animal, or dog or cat, domestic animal. Vicious, a dog or cat that constitutes a physical threat to humans or other domestic animals. So that would be an animal or domestic animal. Is that all right? That constitutes a physical threat to humans or other domestic animals? Okay, rabies. No person shall own or harbor any animal or domesticated animal, but do all domesticated animals get rabies shots?
I don't think so.
No,
Okay, so we might want to have dog or cat there, but now, what do you think? Do y'all know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you just want all the animals that are capable of contracting rabies to have rabies shots.
I think we might leave dog or cat there. Over the age of 4 months of age within the city limits of Carrabelle. Okay, so no one shall own or harbor any dog or cat over the age of 4 months within the city limits of Carrabelle unless such dog or cat is vaccinated. That's a hard one to enforce unless the animal's running free and you know who the owner is. The provisions of this section do not apply to animals owned by licensed research facility or held in a veterinary medical facility or government-operated or licensed animal shelter. All dogs and cats shall be vaccinated against rabies by a licensed veterinarian in accordance with the latest, what is that word, Dan? COMPENDIU. What is it?
Compendium?
Compendium.
Compendium.
What does that mean?
It's usually a collection of, hang on, let's see what it's a collection of, but a collection of documents, so you said.
Okay.
Compendium of.
Animal rabies vaccines and recommendations for immunization. All right, published by the National Association of State Public Health Veterinarians.
So it's just a collection of information from those sources.
Okay, so, basically, the dog and cat shall have to be vaccinated by a licensed veterinarian. And then a certificate of vaccination shall be issued to each owner. Owner of each animal vaccinated on a form regulated by the compendium. Each owner shall also receive a durable vaccination tag indicating the year in which it was vaccinated. Okay, section 4, owner responsibility.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
The tag, it doesn't require that the tag be put on the animal. I don't know if that's important or not. So, it just says they have to have a tag. the owner has to have a tag. Should that tag be on the animal?
Well, I do know in Georgia, the tag has to be on the animal. I don't know.
I'm just assuming, you know, and Mr. Tom and I talked about it. Most animals that I know, even in our city here that are vaccinated, there are a lot of animals I see now that have those tags on them.
Dogs.
That definition doesn't say it has to, but I see a lot of them with the tags on them.
I got one that don't have a tag on it.
Well, I'm not
It's been
saying
vaccinated.
they all do, but I'm just saying I do see some of them.
That's
Yeah,
my,
I fell
my
off
tag
and all
stuff.
that doesn't have one.
My cat, I
My
have a
cat.
collar on it, and I don't know what he done with it. How we got it.
Especially if it was on your property and smells not running without collars at all in the yard.
Yeah.
So you get a certificate and a tag then, so if you lose the tag, you still have the.
You still have to certificate.
Yeah.
And I also pointed out that it goes from section 2 to section 4, so I don't know what
Thank
happens in section 3.
The-
It disappeared.
The page numbers are okay, we'll call that section 3.
There's some more changes to be made on the numbers.
Well, do we want tags to be on the animal?
Well, listening to what Courtney and Keisha said, I mean, those, I think as long as they have the certificate, I think the only advantage of having a tag on a dog or a cat, I mean, if a cat scratches her, if a dog bites you, then you know if he's got a tag on him, then he's had the vaccination.
Or if the animal gets lost accidentally, it's easy to trace the owner through
Usually
the
have a
number.
number on it.
And a lot of people are responsible and put tags on their dogs especially.
Well, you could put a statement in there if you wanted to, just
Well,
say
my
that.
dogs have theirs on their collars, so if we do go to the beach, for instance, and they have their collars on, but just running around the house, they won't have it.
As I was saying, you could put a statement in there that it is recommended that tags be attached to the animals.
Yeah,
Just put,
recommended.
yeah. It already defines that the owner has to have those, but just make a recommendation that they attach them to the dog. That makes it easier for the animal control person that's handling it to verify that.
Okay, then owner responsibility, A, all dogs, it says, shall be kept under restraint in any property zoned residential or commercial. This will exclude hunting dogs engaged in normal legal hunting activity as defined by Florida game and freshwater fish regulations. I don't have a problem with that, this will exclude. But does that, well, maybe this section is just referring to hunting dogs, or the issue of hunting dogs.
I think more particular it is, yeah.
Mhm. Does anyone have comment on that section A under,
All dogs means all dogs, and the exclusion, it covers the hunting dogs and so on, right?
so it's just referring to dogs here, not all animals.
Right.
Okay, every vicious dog or cat as determined by the Carrabelle City Commission shall be confined by its owner within a building or secure enclosure and shall be muzzled or caged whenever off the property of its owner. So does the Carrabelle City Commission determine if an animal is vicious?
It sounds like it.
That's what it sounds like, but I haven't.
We haven't had that come before, so.
Frank, have you?
No.
No, because the kindest dog in the world is mistreated my bite.
You got that right.
I know animal control does.
They do?
So we had a little beagle and it was on a chain in the yard, that somebody came in the yard and it bit him in our yard, and they took him away and held him for 3 days.
They held him though for the rabies.
Yeah.
That's what that was for. If you had a tag, or if you showed them, they shouldn't have took the dog.
Right, there you go.
I'm trying to see what that noise is. That thumping, can you hear it? Oh, okay. I don't know if we needed to have Greg come check the sound system.
Pretty good rhythm.
I muted that one, that kept.
Okay.
Well,
What is this one? Yes, sir.
Does the commission have a set of criteria for determining that the dog is vicious?
Not that I'm aware of.
How could you determine that?
Well, I mean, if you don't, then why have the
Well,
commission making
it's
the
just simple.
determination?
If you've got a fenced yard and a good dog, and you just walk in there, he may tear you up.
Yeah,
Well,
mine.
Oh, I'm
We
not,
have,
no,
we have
no.
a definition for vicious,
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
a threat to humans or other domestic animals.
Well, what about if you just take out the commission out of that decision? I mean, you really don't
Yeah.
want people coming here and saying, this dog chased me and snapped, I want it
My
declared
neighbor's got a
vicious.
vicious dog.
Or we might have to convene on site to see for ourselves. So, take that out as determined by the city commission, Mr.
I would.
I'm reading the definition, it says dog or cat that constitutes physical threat, and then down below it says as determined by the city commission under.
I mean, that, every vicious dog
Or cat.
shall be confined by its owner within
Well,
a.
this thing, I've dealt with this in Tallahassee before,
Mhm.
and as determined by the Carrabelle City Commission, someone's gotta determine
Yeah.
To my exact word,
That's
where
what
I was
I'm
gonna go.
thinking.
In my experience, and Frank, shared in here, if that ever occurred in our city or county that I know of, the animal control authority is the one that made that decision.
But they did have criteria, even in Tallahassee, for, this is not to tell stories, but I had a big old Doberman. And he was sweet, he had his German obedience trained, all this. People would lose their mind when they saw him.
Just by seeing it.
Yeah.
And I had a lady who, there's nothing, I mean, no aggression, nothing, but they're just like, you cannot have that dog, they lost it in animal control, and we talked about it, whatever, but they determined it, but it was multiple, it was like, I think I had like 2 episodes of where, I think you got 1 bite for fruit. I think if it bit somebody, yes, then they're automatically vicious, there was criteria, but the thing is, having dealt with, I don't know the code enforcement, the animal control officer for the county, but I've dealt with the code enforcement officer, one of the priors over in Apalachicola. You could definitely have personal animosity between, it would be, people get attached to their dogs, and if you had an animal control officer that did not like an animal owner, he could have your dog declared vicious and have it destroyed. That would be a very bad thing, without objective criteria.
Yeah.
That he just determines it. He says, I don't like the look of that dog growled at me, that dog is aggressive, without ever touching anybody. That would be a big problem, and I've run into code, I've done both sides, right? I mean, I have to do the code enforcement here at the city, but I've defended code enforcement in other places, and against code enforcement, and it's personal. I mean, half the cases were personal.
Yeah.
Because you're selectively enforcing almost always by definition. And it gets personal if there's no criteria. And when it's up to the judgment of the code enforcement officer, it gets personal. And in Franklin County, I've seen it get real personal. So.
Problem I have here is that it'll be determined by the city commission. Does that mean we need to have an agenda item?
Yeah, no, that's what's,
Bring it all
I
in
agree.
tonight
Again, as the city.
to a meeting, and then if we have.
Yeah, you're the one who would have
And
a
then
dog
If
owner.
we only have a 3-2 vote, then,
Yeah.
you
You're gonna vote to destroy someone's dog, but it may need destroying.
But we're gonna do that off the recommendation of someone else.
It doesn't say it's getting destroyed, it just says that it will be muzzled when off the property of its owner.
Yeah,
Or
muzzled or caged.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was going on my recollection of what you do with vicious dogs.
Yeah.
Because I'd want them destroyed if they were vicious, right? I mean, muzzled or caged, I mean, when it gets
Well,
loose again,
generally
what
that-
happens then? You
a
just
lot of
muzzle and cage
times-
it again? I mean,
That goes to court, though. You'll see that something like that on the news where an animal has killed someone, and then it ends up going to court.
I wonder if it isn't in there, because most
It-
of them
I
have
think
you
it talks
destroying
about
the dog.
Most of these junkyards got dogs
In
in them, you go in and
impoundment,
have
under
dogs, you have them
impoundment.
come out.
I was thinking about that for lay down
Yeah,
yards.
and we had them in service.
All right,
Getting
but,
offense
well,
with
let's
that.
move forward, we'll come back to this one. C, no animal shall be allowed to cause a nuisance. The owner of every dog or cat, now animal or domesticated animal, shall be held responsible for the behavior of such animal under the provisions of this ordinance. So, and nuisance is defined. So we've been over that, you know, we wanna make sure that it's fine, you know, like we want it to be, so no animal shall be allowed to cause a nuisance as defined in this ordinance. And then D, all animal owners shall provide adequate food, water, shelter, medical care if needed, and sanitary environment. E, failure to comply with the provisions of this selection shall subject the owner to a fine of $10 to $100. So this, you know, we had Mr. George Insweiler talk in public that this needed to be increased. And then we would ask ourselves then which agency would issue the citation for the fine and collect. So that would be for Mr. Hartman to, yes, sir.
Well, when I read this after it was sent out, you know, the fines seem very 1986-ish. So could they start with just using like the consumer price index change or something from 86 to now and just increase everything accordingly? Because some of these just aren't it'd be like getting drunk driving, $5 for a drunk driving
Yeah.
thing, and well, I'll take my chances.
Just by way of guidance, it's always a civil infraction. Maximum civil penalty is $500. It can't be more than $500. And not typically, a civil penalty of less than the maximum civil penalty if the person who has committed the civil infraction does not contest. That's what they're calling a citation notice violation. So we can order them. My recommendation would be mirror the county.
Franklin County has a chart here, they have 10 items listed on the chart, so 10 descriptions of violations. They have a first violation, a second violation, and a third violation. The violation for humane care requirement, the first violation is $100, the second violation is mandatory court appearance.
First violation's $100.
$100 for humane care required. Everything in there, they have them listed, interference with the animal control officers, first violation is $50, second $75, and then $250 for the third, or anything after. Running at large is $30, $75 for the second violation, $250 for anything after. Public nuisance prohibited is $30, $75, and $250. Humane care requirements, $100 for the first violation, mandatory court appearance for anything after. Abandonment of an animal is $100, $250 for the second fine, and or anything after. Violations which result in destruction or loss of personal property starts out $100, $250 for the second, and mandatory court appearance for anything after, third and after. Violations which result in unprovoked biting, wounding, or attacking of a domestic animal or person, $450 per person, $250 an animal, mandatory court appearance. Violations and provision pertaining to a dangerous or vicious animal which does not result in injury to a person or domestic animal, $250 for the first occurrence, and mandatory court appearance for anything after. And violations of any persons pertaining to a dangerous or vicious animal which does not result in injury to a person or domestic animal, $250. I think that's the same as before. The $250 for the first, and mandatory for anything after. So there's a chart they give out.
I would, without studying what she just said, I would suggest that we go to that.
That's what I'm thinking.
And let me add this, I've had experience where my neighbors, I won't say who, they've actually had to go to and pick up their animal where it had been picked up, and they've been being charged with county fees and not these fees.
Well, if the county was picking them up, you know, that
Oh,
would
they
be.
picked them up here in the city of Carrabelle.
Okay. Well,
That's how
I,
it's always been.
That's-
They
that's
just now
exactly-
decided that they're not.
okay. I would, say this letter E under section 4, or 3, whatever it is. It says a failure to comply with the provisions of this section. Maybe we should just take that out of there and get that chart that you have and let us all review that chart and maybe of fees. And we'll just add that chart of fees to this ordinance and just take out this, because this
This next
line-
couple of pages, it talks about fees
It
on
does.
almost every section.
Uh-huh.
It does, yeah.
And this fine, is that, where have they show that listed? Is it like at the end of there, or is it, do they have? is-
No, it's about the middle. There's 25 pages in their ordinance, and it's on page 7.
What's the heading of it, the chart?
We really don't have, we don't have.
All right. Well, it says maximum civil penalties for violations of the article not otherwise listed in subsection F, this section. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, the items that she read, some of those pertain to the items that are in this section. So I think we could take that out, just take out E. And add in a chart like that. We can review it and see if we want to reduce or add to those numbers or leave them the same if the county is enforcing, and they'll be accustomed to that.
That was my first thought, is standardize it, since they're the ones that's gonna be handled. And it didn't seem like they were out of kilter. But that's without studying and looking at it, just what she read.
And it seems more like today's pricing. We did have to raise our occupational licenses fees a couple of years ago. They hadn't been raised since 1972. They were still the same prices. So impoundment, any dog found running at large may be impounded by the, here it says Carrabelle Animal Control Authority. And I would take that Carrabelle out and just put Animal Control Authority.
Yes.
Okay. In an animal shelter confined in a humane manner, immediately upon impounding a dog, the Animal Control Authority shall make every reasonable effort to notify the owner and inform such owner of the conditions under which the animal may be regained. Dogs not claimed within a period of 5 full days, and we need to make sure, how does that confirm with the Franklin County ordinance?
But we don't want them within our property.
No. So we would, anything right in here needs to be whatever the Franklin County ordinance is. Dogs not claimed within a period of 5 full days in which the shelter is open to the public, business days, shall become the property of, it says the city of Carrabelle.
County.
How about the Animal Control Authority?
There you go.
How would that be? Okay. Okay. Animals becoming the property of the city of Carrabelle shall be disposed of in the following manner. Okay. Now the animal control, now we need to, this is where,
I don't see where theirs says anything about confining the animal to the animal control. It just talks about running at large prohibited, and it talks about how it's unlawful for it to run at large, but I don't see where they have any, what's gonna happen if it runs at large, or say that they're even gonna pick it up.
and I did ask Mr. Marone, would the officer come over here and patrol for animals running at large? That's our main issue. And he was gonna get back with me as well as whether or not an officer accompanies, a sheriff accompanies a call, deputy sheriff. And it says that the animal shall be destroyed you know, in a manner to cause as little pain as possible. Said animal at the discretion of the animal control officer may be given to an adult who desires to give the animal a home, and who pays the impoundment fees, and it talks about, you know, these fees and the vaccination deposit and these neutering deposits. That all needs to be, coincide with the county's fees. And does the county do neutering? Do they do that before, once they pick an animal up?
I'm not sure, but I would think that would be done at the Humane Society, but. when they
Is
do
it a
that,
no-kill shelter?
I don't know.
I
The
don't,
Humane Society is.
Yeah, okay, cause
But
I
I
was
don't,
thinking, I
but
was
the
thinking
county,
about one.
the animal control authority, I do not believe is a no-kill authority. Unless y'all know something different.
No, I believe
I
that
think they destroy them if they,
they have an incinerator.
and that's why when we get together on this again, we need to have someone from the county come. So this needs to kind of coincide, this number one and number two with the county. It can be released to the Humane Society for adoption or disposal. When a dog is found running at large and its ownership is verified by the Animal Control Authority, the authority may exercise the option of serving the owner with a notice of violation in lieu of impounding the animal. So, and a notice of violation, that, you know, and in lieu of impounding the animal, they may want to do that. We may want to allow that because it may be a one-time, you know, incident. Animal may be lost. They may have moved to a new house and the animal's trying to go back to its other place, something like that. But a notice of violation, I don't know, I feel like they should just go ahead and be fined. But maybe I'm a little too hard-hearted.
That is what a notice of violation is.
It's a fine?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're violating, and then it says if you violate it, this is what you are charged.
And going back, they do have a section on impoundment in the county.
Okay. In the event the Animal Control Authority finds dogs or cats, animals, to be suffering, it shall have the right forthwith to remove or cause to have removed any such animals to a safe place for care at the owner's expense, or to euthanize them when necessary to prevent further suffering. Return to the owner shall be withheld until the owner shall have made full payment for all expenses incurred. And this made me think about, there was an issue with a horse in the county that was just pure skin and bones. It was treated so bad. And they moved that horse to another location. It was actually in the city limits of Carrabelle, and it wasn't being treated. I don't know where it is now, but the animal control folks were working with it.
And basically, when I was called on the code enforcement, I called the code enforcement, they said as long as they have a bowl of water and hay, they don't have to have shade or anything.
Oh.
So, and that was everybody's worry. It was tied to a really short rope to a tree, and there was no shade, nothing. There was flies, it was hot, but they had a bucket of water sitting there, and it wasn't inhumane.
Okay. Disposal of an animal by any method specified herein does not relieve the owner of liability for violations and accrued charges. Redemption. And so this needs to coincide with the county as well. It's got fees and how the animal is impounded and how it may be redeemed by the owner within 5 days. Well, we don't know what the county's has in their ordinance, and that should be with the county's ordinance, coincide, because they're going to be managing the animal. A refundable, and the same thing, the vaccination deposit, that may be different on the county. A refundable vaccination deposit of $10 will be paid for unvaccinated animals to be refunded upon proof of vaccination as outlined in section 2. So we'll do this with the Franklin County.
I don't know if you can vaccinate one for $10 now.
You can get a voucher from the Humane Society for 15 to take to a clinic in Tallahassee.
That's
But you
what
gotta
they
get them
did.
to Tallahassee, and the clinic's only open.
Well, this is just saying a $10 deposit, then you have to still take it and get it vaccinated. You get your $10 back after you vaccinate it.
Vaccinations on a lot more than.
Well, this is just a $10 deposit that you get back once you bring proof back.
$400.
It might not be worth the trip for $10.
Then if you keep the deposit,
Yeah, it's sort of like it might get the shot, you know.
Adoption, section 7 or 6, any animal may be released to the Franklin County Humane Society or other humane society for adoption with the understanding that suitable homes will be found and the animal is to be vaccinated and neutered. That's all good. Right of entry, an animal control officer, and so now here it talks about an animal control officer, and we talked earlier, do we need for that to be in the definition? Shall have the right to enter upon any private or public property except a building, mobile home, or other structure designated for and used for residential purposes. Okay, so they'll have the right to enter on any private or public property for the purpose of enforcing this ordinance. If any person refuses entrance to the premises in his possession or control to the animal control officer attempting to enforce this ordinance, such officer shall contact a law enforcement officer and proceed on such premises with a warrant or other document of authority as necessary to lawfully enter such premises for the purpose of enforcing this ordinance.
so they can't go into any homes
No.
without a
Right.
warrant.
No structure.
Yeah, nowhere where somebody lives, but otherwise they can come, and if they can't get on the property, this talks about here that they can call a law enforcement officer to assist them with getting on the property. And according to the county, we may have to add some other wording about how the law enforcement officer is gonna be called if there's a human involved in the incident. Section 9, interference. No person shall interfere with, hinder, or molest any agent of the Animal Control Authority in the performance of any duty herein provided. Any person violating this section shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be subject to a fine not less than $50 or more than $500. And how is that, Mr. Hartman?
That's
State,
what's gonna be,
that's state statute, isn't it?
yeah.
'Cause the last-
Wait a minute though, it's,
Franklin County started out at $50 for their first violation.
Yeah.
well, we're gonna
If
follow
it's a
the,
misdemeanor, it would be a judge that's imposing the fine.
but we are following the table
Right.
in the state statute, which is max 500.
That's right.
Does Franklin County have a chart for something like
Interference with animal control
Yeah.
is $50 for the first violation, $75 for the second, and $250 for the third, or anything thereafter.
There you go.
I think we should include that fee chart. Is that all right?
Yeah, because if you have a fee chart, then they'll impose what the fine is. Otherwise, the judge decides. It's a misdemeanor, this is what you,
Okay.
it can't be less, can't be more,
Uh-huh.
but they're gonna decide. 9 times out of 10, that judge is gonna say $50.
So it would be better to have a fee chart.
If it's laid out in your ordinance, then they go by your ordinance.
Okay, thank you. So we'll put a fee charge. Citations or violations, the animal control officer or any law enforcement officer shall, upon determination that a violation of this ordinance has occurred, issue a citation on the person owning, keeping, or harboring the animal. The citation shall state the date and time of issuance, name and address of the person in violation, description of the animal involved, and a demand that the accused pay within 72 hours a penalty of $10 for the first offense within 1 year, a penalty of $20 for subsequent offenses within 1 year, and If a person should fail to pay or appeal such penalty, the animal control officer shall file a complaint against such person with the state's attorney's office. So is there a chart for this, or is it?
It's kind of redundant,
I was
isn't
gonna
it?
say, I think it's kind of redundant. Yeah,
Is it
repetitious.
redundant from the chart that we discussed earlier regarding?
Well, I think each one has its own table of the violation.
And that's what you do.
I would think that the county ordinance has the content that needs to be in the notice violation. And I think it's patterned on 16221. I could make one up.
It
It'll-
does, they have it laid out exactly what's.
So we should adopt that because the section of statute was adopted in '89. So it's gonna, this ordinance is gonna predate this due process requirement.
So they have a fee
They're
schedule?
trying to find, they have the fee schedule
Okay.
that the charter shows you, but then they also had a section, that said what was supposed to be in the citation, everything, contents of citation, and they list out, everything they want in the citation.
1 through 10.
1 through 11B.
Okay. And appeals of such violations will be filed with the county clerk's office to be heard by the county judge. If such an appeal is denied by the judge after a hearing, the violator shall pay the fine plus court costs. Is that typical?
They also have a repeal process.
Okay. Cruelty, fighting, and abandonment. No person shall inflict or cause to inflict unnecessary pain and suffering to any animal. It will be unlawful to keep and maintain animals for the purpose of fighting or participate in fighting. It will be unlawful for anyone to abandon an animal. Failure to comply with this section shall subject the violator to a fine of $50 to $500 or up to 180 in jail. Do they have in that county ordinance anything regarding cruelty and fighting, abandonment?
They do have abandonment. I don't see anything. They have humane care, which I guess could be cruelty.
Now, this original fee chart, did you read fees regarding abandonment or cruelty? Did they
It
have-
has one for abandonment. It
Okay.
doesn't have one that says cruelty, but they have humane care.
Uh-huh.
So it may fall under cruelty, fall under humane care.
So if we include that fee chart, do you think that would be, it would be covered?
Or we could just do, we could add cruelty to it.
Uh-huh.
Whatever Dan thinks.
Yeah, I think it's cover, I do want to cover all three. So we should.
So on section 9, or excuse me, section 10, should be 9, the citations on violation, is that saying that they're issuing a citation right then and there on top of the fee schedule table?
Can we just have an attached table and just reference in each section you need to include in? Instead of trying to pick it out and break it up?
I know that table that's in the county's ordinance, does it reference sections?
It does.
So that's probably what we could do, is just reference the section.
We can't straighten out the numbers.
Because we already talk about it, well, the fees are similar, the violation fees are very similar to well, they're all $10 or $20. So for any section that has fees. I'm gonna just move on to section 12, duty to report animal bites, and shall be the duty of every person licensed to practice medicine, osteopathic medicine, veterinary medicine, or any other person knowing or in attendance of an animal bite case to promptly report to the Franklin County Health Department every instance in which a person is bitten by a dog or other domestic or wild animal. So I would just say by a domestic animal or other wild animals. And those folks that are licensed, medical folks, they know they have that duty already. Then removal of dead animals from public right-of-way. When an animal is found dead on the public right-of-way, it shall be the part of the animal control officer's responsibility to remove and properly dispose of the carcass. Now, do
Our streets and roads does that.
yeah, we could just leave that like that, but I'm sure that, you know, if we don't leave animals laying around till somebody can get to it. Okay. Repeal of conflicting ordinances, and so all of this, repeal of conflicting ordinances, servability, applicability, safety clause, well, those that I just named, they're standard, isn't that standard, Dan?
It is.
Number, section 14, 15, and 16.
Yes, all that's the same. And the safety clause,
I know it.
I don't know about that one. I mean, the severability, applicability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, and really applicability is effective date, is what we usually call it. And then safety clause, and that's usually a whereas up top in the ordinance. I don't know why, that's all, that's. And I think it's typically up front. I don't know that it's not a requirement in section 17.
I know that I did read health, safety, and welfare.
Yeah, it is under the whereas.
The same thing?
And in the new ordinance, the attorney have it in appropriate location.
All right, so, but it says that, it's a little bit different wording. It says that we determine and declare that this ordinance is necessary for the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Carrabelle.
They may have done it on an emergency basis or something.
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah,
That's
when
what-
they use the word immediate, yeah.
It sounds that way. So you might want to take that out, but change the whereas a little bit. Signed by Charles Millender, Kenneth B. Cope, Edna May Marvin, and Carlton Walton.
And one commissioner didn't sign.
And Charles Daniels was the city clerk.
He was, for a long time.
All right, do we have any other input? Do we need to review anything at this moment? You could get us a copy of the Franklin County ordinance.
And then, you know, it was right there on the website under recent ordinances, so I can copy the link and send it out.
It says recent, do you think they just revised it maybe?
I'm not sure, it says 2007, but I don't know because they've been talking about it, if it just came up under recent.
Maybe they put it so everybody,
It was on the top of the recent ordinance, it was the very first one on it.
Yeah, I didn't hear them talk about revising anything. I've just heard a lot of discussion.
I mean, it's
While I was
dated
attending the meeting.
2017, so it's not a new
Yeah.
ordinance, but it has been updated.
I would think
It's
they would
under
just-
recent ordinances, and they, maybe that's because we discussed it.
Is that when they changed it to add the pickup on the beach?
I think they were just putting it back out there for education purposes.
yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't change it for because they have a leash law for the beaches, so.
Right, but they're picking up after animals.
Yeah.
on the beaches. I remember it coming up a couple years ago.
If everybody gets their edits to Keisha, I can, actually, Keisha, you tell me, do you want to send them all to me? I've made some, or I've made some tracking red line. I can send it to you, and you can add to it, either way, so.
Either way, it's probably,
But I guess get all comments to Keisha, and we'll keep, Keisha and I will sort it out.
Did you want, more of a clear definition about what constitutes a domestic animal?
Yes, we're gonna put domestic animal in the list of definitions.
And actually, what was the statutory site for that?
It's section. 843.041. And that's
Right, it's probably close enough. It's one of the little.
we got another title, XLVI of the Florida statute.
Okay, perfect. 843.04.
did we decide about, because that's the only thing I have a question mark, is the animal control officer.
We're putting that as a definition? I would like to, but
I know it talks about animal control officer back here.
Yeah.
it does. Now, you still have your Franklin County up? Do they,
I don't think they did. Yes, they had animal control officer.
I think we should. And then also, Dan, we're gonna have to add, I don't know, some wording about whenever it's appropriate for the law enforcement officer to accompany. I mean, we just can't say it on recordings. I mean,
We'll just get all the comments from everybody, incorporate it all, and move on.
I'll.
I hear you.
you know, they're charging, and then they're charging again, and then demands, and it's just a lot.
But didn't you say that Michael's gonna have more communication with you about that?
He has not followed up with me on that, but we're gonna ask him now. He's been notified this morning that we want him and or Fonda
Right.
to come to our meeting, our next, so we need to have it as a special meeting because it may get too long and drawn out for a regular meeting. And it's apparent that only a couple of residents are truly interested at this point.
I wouldn't assume that.
Okay, where are they?
Well, I called one person to bring with me and had to take his wife to a medical appointment, and there are other reasons, but
Okay,
it's, so it's coming back here again. There's gonna be another meeting
well,
about this.
that's what I'm about to ask, to have it in November. Because we've got 2 more meetings this month, and then it's we've got our CRA meeting and another special meeting this month of October, and then November, we'll have our commission meeting. I don't think we have any other meetings in November, but, other than that, but then it's Thanksgiving, but I think we should have it in November. Do you all have any idea if you're gonna have a P&Z meeting on the 21st yet? Do you know if there's any indication of that?
This month or November?
November. You don't have an indication of that?
Probably will have something for November.
And that might be a good day to have a meeting, because the attorney will be here already.
Someone's looking at a special exception, and if they get theirs out in the correct timing, because they were supposed to come on October, they missed the deadline, so that would push them back to November.
And RBC is stirring again, so
Yes.
they may have some sort of preliminary, so I thought.
Yeah, because,
They called me today, I'll call them back.
Well, November the 21st, then, the P&Z meeting is at 2. So what time would be a good time? 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock or what? And we can't vote on it now, but we'll vote on it in our commission meeting. Whenever we have
If we think either that morning or it has to be later that afternoon, we'll probably run over.
That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, I wouldn't want to try to
What's
just
the
limit
date?
it to 1 hour
I know
before
it.
the P and Z meeting, because then you can cut your time.
November 21st.
Uh-huh. So we could go at 3 o'clock, and that would give us an hour and a half.
Or
till-
immediately after P and Z.
Yeah,
So that's November 23rd,
First.
21st, 3 o'clock.
and we'll announce that and vote on that at our commission, November commission meeting. But we know that now, and we can go ahead and let Mr. Marone know, the county coordinator and the animal control superintendent, so they can attend, and the attorney can put it on his schedule. And that will give us plenty of time to get the draft developed and maybe send it to Michael Marone to look at.
P and Z's
Or
at 2.
immediately following P and Z.
Oh, I got that now.
And then should we consider a memorandum of agreement with the county regarding this payment, or maybe, let's don't talk about that right now. Let's,
Yeah.
okay.
Like an interlocal agreement.
But there'd be some motivation to get a patrol here, right? Drive around the streets, not complaint driven, but drive around the streets and pick up
Well,
dogs.
we can, that's what we can ask for from the county, if they will do that. I would like to ask them what, if you have a person hired as an animal control officer, and now you have 2 cities paying an additional service fee on top, why are they doing other duties at the landfill? And
It's not like a matter of principle to me to see somebody's dog running around. Since that rabies thing came into East Point, I think we ought to be out in front of that, and it's when a big dog comes that could injure you. We walk around in our neighborhood, and there's sometimes 3, 4 dogs packed up, running around together, and they're not little dogs, they're big dogs. And so, I think somebody needs to be driving through the city, picking up the ones that are just uncontrolled, and not wait for somebody to call, because if you call, by the time they get there, the dog's not there anymore. It's just how it works.
Mr. Hartman, as it is now, is this like a complaint-driven style ordinance, or do?
It is, all the code, well, yeah, all the code enforcement in the city is complaint driven. And when, I know we've talked about this before, because it was when Mr. I forgot his last name, Genie Concrete, George, came forward. Obviously, that's how it's driven at the county as well, it's complaint driven. The county, that was my understanding, right? You call 911, or even they dispatch you non-emergency to animal control. So that's how it gets responded to.
Yeah. Just 2 days ago, I picked up a friend, and a big pit bull had run into his yard, bit his cat, took off, and, you know, he calls animal control, but the pit bull's not there anymore. But the pit bull was running around loose before that, so.
I think if you could ask them for an increased patrol for a period of time, and once they've picked up these dogs and people have had to pay the fine, they're gonna start keeping their dogs,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna have as much problem.
The only obstacle I think we're gonna run into with that is the entire county is complaint driven. As far as animal control. That's the way they handle their process.
But were they talking about hiring a part-time person for 7,000 apiece?
They did mention that. They
Specifically
did
just
mention
for
that.
enforcement?
They did talk about, they did mention a part-time person. I don't know if that's because Mr. Albert is out right now.
Yeah.
Might be some reason like that. Right now, they just have one animal control person.
It was in their discussion, but I never heard any
definites.
All right.
Did we adjourn?
Well, I guess we can. And we can do like Ms. Courtney says and ask for some increased patrol for an initial period of time and see what, how
And
that.
if they tell us no, then it's all our bad.
And when we have the county here, you be here and ask for it.
I'm not gone in my RV, if they're not here, I'll be here.
Okay, then, is there anything else we want to review at this point? Anybody? All right, then. We're adjourned.
Thank you.